big of an issue and concern for you is housing in this country? According to a new report from BNN Bloomberg citing a strategist, Canada is sitting on the worst housing bubble of all time, with demand surging past available housing supply as record numbers of immigrants come to Canada looking for a home, and with fewer homes being built, we are well into the territory of disaster when it comes to the housing market in Canada. Strangely, as the situation has spiraled out of control due to reckless federal policies like mass immigration and wasteful spending, which has triggered higher borrowing costs, the feds a few weeks ago announced that actually housing was primarily the responsibility of the provinces and not a federal issue.
Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
But then a few weeks later, the feds convened a housing-themed cabinet retreat to try to solve the problem. Are there a bunch of headless chickens running this country right now, not knowing who's responsible for the problems that they're all creating? I don't know about you, but it certainly feels that way for me. Young Canadians can no longer afford to buy a home, which means most young Canadians will be renting forever, which also means that they will have to put off retirement for many years because owning a home and building equity in that home used to be a conventional way that Canadians could retire. We're not just dealing with a housing issue. When young Canadians no longer have hope and dreams for the future, despair and depression kick in. And if you don't think that will have an impact on the economy, then you'd be kidding yourself. In fact, things are so bad that Canadians are now glorifying the so-called van life, making TikToks and videos celebrating how great their life is living in the back of a van or a car. Stick around to see this depressing new trend being glorified somehow as a smart and modern way to live. Drop a like in the video, help us out with subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: is housing affordability your number one concern? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. Take a look at this article published in BNN Bloomberg last week. Canada likely sitting on the largest housing bubble of all time. The Canadian housing market is at high risk of unraveling, according to one expert. The level of debt that Canadians have taken on in comparison to their incomes has put many in a precarious position should mortgage rates continue to rise, which is likely, Philip Colmar, partner at MRB Partners, told BNN Bloomberg in an interview on Tuesday. That strategist went on BNN Bloomberg to give an interview discussing the situation Canada is in right now. Take a look at this.
The worst part for a housing bubble is when you have a credit bubble underneath it. And the amount of Canadian leverage into the system versus incomes is pretty astronomical. And we've seen debt servicing going up dramatically. We've seen it's very hard. A lot of homeowners, they don't benefit from 30-year fix like the United States does.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of floating that got reset. There's a lot of other that are rolling over within 5 years. And we've been in a couple of years of this higher interest rate environment. So we have some risks in the situation. We see the Canadian banks really not wanting to allow it to topple. They've been trying to extend these things. But that's, in many ways, at some point it will. We've got Wild E. Coyote sitting over a cliff, and the bank's trying to hold the plank out to hold it up, but not to be too scary. But there is a risk, definitely a risk here, that if mortgage rates go higher or unemployment were to rise when we hit the next recession, then this thing does end up in a deleveraging cycle.
So not only are Canadians at high risk of defaulting on their mortgages because underneath this housing bubble is a credit bubble, fewer and fewer homes are being built despite record numbers of people coming into Canada and demand for housing surging. In July, housing starts dropped by 10% the month prior, which is actually still above the market expectation. The total number of homes built in urban areas in the month of July was down by 11%. Multi-unit urban homes dropped 12%, and single detached urban homes dropped by 4%. And because interest rates are so high, 1 in 5 home builders in Canada are canceling their builds, canceling their projects. Well, what are the solutions that we're seeing being put on the table when it comes to this issue? Well, it looks as though no one is talking about trying to stop the surge in demand by cutting immigration. We know that worked well in the 1970s during a housing crisis, but both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre want nothing to do with cutting immigration levels. On the other side, it looks as though both parties have a consensus in building high-density vertical housing around public transit systems. Pierre Poilievre wants to incentivize municipalities who build more homes and withhold funds from municipalities who don't build. But is it really the ideal in this country of working extremely hard for your entire life just to live in a tiny box in the sky with hundreds of other people rubbing shoulders with one another? Do we really want to see high rises popping up closer and closer to our beautiful rural land in this country? But where are these young Canadians going to live when they can no longer afford to pay for their mortgage and are forced to leave their home? Or in the case of most young Canadians, won't be able to afford a home in the first place. It looks as though they're resorting to living in their vans and cars. And many of them are now resorting to making a career out of living in their van. They're sort of van life influencers. What a sad state of affairs our country is now in. But you take a look at these videos and let me know if you think any of this is normal at all.
This is how I sleep in my bed. First, I jump back here like a mother froggy, and then I tilt it back forward. What? And then I shove this down here and tuck it in real good. And then I can straighten out my legs like so. But when I get cold, I get my sleeping bag, which is good for anything above 20 degrees. And so I zip it up and I lay back and then I roll down the window and then I woo-sa.
So just be warned, I don't live in like a normal apartment. This is my place right here.
Where?
Right here. Welcome to my tiny home on wheels. Make yourself at home.
Love it. How long have you lived in it?
So it's actually been 2.5 years in this. It's not just Vancouver. My husband and I have lived in 3 countries in this thing, 15 states, 2 provinces, and we just got back from Mexico last week. And underneath this seat here is the closet. Here is our pantry. So this is the whole kitchen area, an induction stove, and a fridge right here as well.
Hi, I'm Brooke and I live full-time in my SUV with my dog Pippa, and this is quite literally how I poop. This is how I do it. I get a tall kitchen bag. I find that this size, for some reason, just works the best. Then I rip the seam on the side so I can adjust it so it can fit my body. I then just will simply pull it around my body, squat down just like you would if you were outside, pull it up in the front in case I also need to pee, and then just poop right in the bag. Then I have some rocks in here to show you. I tie off the bag as close to the poop as possible so it's nice and sealed in there. Then I put it into a Tupperware container where I also store my dog's poop for the day. And it keeps the smell out.
Somebody has to fix this situation. This is not normal. This is not good. Not good at all. Van lifer who lives in downtown Toronto. But she's very proud of it. You see, it's become this new thing where they're like, look at how cool this is, guys. You should do it too. You should live in your car like me.
And I moved the van from the parking lot that we were in onto the street that's right in front of me. Yes, I know this seems silly, but there's a permit system, so you can't park there before 10 a.m. So at around 9:45, I'll move the van there. And once I know we're not getting a parking ticket, I'll do my skincare in the back, brush my teeth, don't forget sunscreen, then I get dressed, do my makeup, and get ready to head out to a cafe to do some work. It was a beautifully crisp, sunny winter's day, and the cafe that I went to work at had a vegan apricot Danish. So I got a Danish and an oat latte. And I sat in the cafe for about 5 hours doing schoolwork, and that was my morning.
She goes to study at a vegan cafe where she'll get her oat latte, and she'll get her vegan croissant, and she's gonna sit there and study, but she really wants you to almost embrace her lifestyle. Do it too. No thanks. I think that's probably not the highest ideal in life. But the success of these videos is speaking to a larger trend. The reason why it's successful is because it's relatable to so many people. People are now having to live in their cars and vans because they can't live in a house. I mean, it's a horrible situation. I can't believe what we've come to in this country, that this is now being glorified. We're getting lessons on how to live in the back of your car and how to get yourself your extra leg room where you can sleep and then go to the cafe to get your latte, your vegan latte. Look, this situation needs to be solved. It's getting out of hand. It's getting out of control. No hope and no dreams for young Canadians because they're giving up on home ownership and instead are looking for alternative solutions like living in the back of a van. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.